Hello, everyone. Welcome to the EJG3 show. This is your host, Eddie Geller. In this episode, we are going to recap the NFL draft. Um, First of all, we all know only two QBs got selected in the first round, so it wasn't really a marquee QB draft. We all know that. But let's just dive in. With Cam Ward being selected to the Tennessee Titans. First off, I don't think Cam Ward is bad. Um, you know, I think Tennessee had to draft him because he was the best available quarterback, and they needed a quarterback. And I think the reality is, I think Cam Ward is the type of guy that can win games, but you need surrounding parts. You need good wide receivers. You need a tight end. If you surround him with those parts, I think he could be a good quarterback. Um, the only thing with Cam Ward, he's in the AFC, which means the AFC is loaded with quarterbacks. You got Josh Allen, Mahomes. We know Burrow, Lamar, etc. We know who those guys are, so it's going to be tough to compete. Um, you know, to be fair and honest, uh, if we're going to project him to be the starter, just out of the AFC, I'm leaning more. I'm leaning more. He's more like the 11th best quarterback in that conference, which obviously is tough. He's a rookie. That could be unfair, but that's just the reality. He's just 11th best quarterback in that conference because that conference is loaded with quarterbacks. And I'm glad that Tennessee has an offensive coach. Um, but it's going to be brutal. His rookie year. Although I will say that division is not great. So I think the over and under for Tennessee Titans it's 5.5. Uh, Me right now as a better, I would lean way over. They don't have that quarterback who turned the ball over last year. Um, and the reality is, Will Levis. Sorry, I apologize. I was thinking of the name. Will Levis was turning the ball over a lot last year, and Will Levis won't be the starter. And Tennessee Titans they do have good defense, but you got to put parts around them. I do believe in Cam Ward, but I think it's going to be a rough rookie season. But like I said, he can still win 7 games, 7, 8 games this year. But the reality is that that division, the AFC South, is not good. Uh, we don't know what Jacksonville's going to look like. We don't know what Houston's O line is going to look like. Uh, you know, Even though Houston's right now to me is a favorite to win that division, but uh, Indy, eh, uh, you know, Anthony Richardson, uh, who knows? I mean, that it's not the strongest QBs in that division. Um, I want to talk about this. Jacksonville selected Travis Hunter, uh, cornerback, wide receiver out of Colorado. People say that he's the best player in the draft. Who knows? But my question is, will he play wide receiver or defensive back? Or will he play both? I mean, that's a question that we're all asking. Because the NFL, I just think that's going to be too much on his body if he played both ways. Um, For me, I would have him play wide receiver because I just think, first of all, offensive players get paid the most, um, and they get more production. But he's obviously a great, he was a good defensive back for Colorado. Um, so I'm curious where he's going to play. Um, Although I will say this, I don't know why the Jacksonville Jaguars traded their 2026 first round pick to go get him. I felt like they gave up way too much. Um, new head coach, new GM. The GM's young. I just felt like you don't even know what their personnel is going to look like, and you're drafting a wide receiver, a defensive back. Wouldn't you want to wait? I just and they say next year is the better draft. I don't know. I just thought they gave up way too much. But I like the fact that the Browns, you know, they traded back, got a first round pick for 2026. They have two picks maybe in the top 10. Because like I said, Jacksonville might not be good. We Trevor Lawrence, he's kind of been a hit and miss these past 2 years. Um, he gets hit, but then injuries set him back. I don't know. I don't know what to make with Jacksonville. Cleveland, they don't make the smartest decisions. I'm glad that they didn't take a quarterback at number two. They traded back, got Mason Graham, uh, defensive tackle out of Michigan. Uh, I just felt like, okay, you have two picks next year. Uh, they drafted Dylan Gabriel and Shador Sanders. We'll get to Shador Sanders later on in the show. So, hey, if Shador or Dylan hit, maybe you don't need to draft a quarterback. But I think they probably will next year. Um, but I like the fact that, hey, you didn't make the dumb decision. And Cleveland, at times, makes some dumb decisions, lately. And I feel like that is the best decision because I think they will be bad next year. Get two top 10 picks. You can build the old offense. Deshaun Watson will probably be out of the building. So I I kind of like the fact that Cleveland moved back, got a got a first round pick. Um, I just think that's a good decision. But let's go to the Raiders. Because we'll talk about the Browns later on in the show. The Raiders picked up Ashton Jeanty, my bad. Uh, Running back out of Boise State. Uh, 2,600 yards last year with 29 touchdowns rushing. Um, Look, Pete Carroll, he likes a running back. We saw him back in Seattle. He had Marshawn Lynch. Geno Smith is very capable quarterback. The Raiders, they have a defense in Crosby. Uh, so they have a pot. I think they're in good shape to compete for second place in the AFC West. Projection, not my prediction. I think they're projected maybe to be in second place. But I really do think the Raiders, with their running back, Geno Smith loves the running back. When he has a strong running game, he's very capable. Um, I just think Ashton Jeanty is going to be a stud. I think he'll probably win Rookie of the Year. Um, because that's how good I think he is. Um, I think you'll see, Brock Bowers be a very good tight end for the Raiders. Um, I just think the Raiders will be the most improved team. You know, and plus they have a head coach, Pete Carroll. I mean, no offense to Pierre, But the Raiders didn't have a head coach last year, and they got a veteran coach leading the way. I'm really big on the Raiders this year. Maybe not to win the division, but just compete. Win 7 to 10 games around there. But I really do like the Ashton Jeanty pickup. Um, you know, uh, Another pick. Packers loading up on wide receiver. Uh, they took Matthew Golden out of Texas. They have Romeo Dobbs. Christian Watson, who's been hurt. I think the Packers do a good job of drafting, so I'm not really concerned uh, how they draft or who they draft because they do a good job in development. Um, you could have said defense, you could have said maybe O line, but I like the fact that Matthew Golden, went because you know what, Jordan Love is still he's still a young quarterback, and he needs weapons. You know when you know Christian Watson was out, he struggled big time. So I think Matthew Golden will be a quality wide receiver for them, and we'll see. And they'll probably be a playoff team next year. But who knows? Who knows? We gotta talk about this. I want to talk about the Giants real quick. They picked up Abdule Carter, edge rusher out of Penn State. Love the pick. I think he's going to be a stud. I think he's going to be the defensive player of the year. The Giants added more depth to that D line. So they picked the best player available. I'm glad that they didn't pick a quarterback at number 3. There were talks about that. I'm like, no, 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 no. Pick the best guy available, and that's what they did. You know, I think he's going to be a stud, just just by prediction. But later on in that first round, they traded back in the first round, got Jaxson Dart out of Ole Miss. I gotta tell you, I'm not in love with Jaxson Dart, but I don't know how good he will be. He may be a good quarterback, he may not. I'm leaning towards he won't be, uh, because I think he struggled against some teams in the SEC when you have Lane Kiffin, an offensive guru. Um, but they traded. No, I thought they could have waited to second round. But they probably traded back into the first round to get that extra year. Because most likely, Russell Wilson or Jameis will start for them. Probably leaning towards Russell Wilson. Now, Brian Dable needs to win. Brian Dable needs to win. Because his job might be on the line this year, and if Jaxson Dart gets good development, develops quickly. He could play this year. Um, I think the Giants need to win 7 to 8 games uh, for Dable to keep his job. But look, who knows? It's a quarterback. Quarterbacks are always hit and miss. If you miss on a quarterback, you're doomed. But it was a late selection. Uh, but we've seen players in late first round hit like Lamar Jackson. So Jackson Dart, he could be a possible. There's a possibility he could be a good quarterback. Um, but the reality is Jackson Dart needs to hit, or the GM Joe Shane, Brian Dable, they're going to be out, and we'll see. I don't know. But first off, I want to talk about the Bears real quick. I'm high. I was high on the Bears last year. I'm high on them this coming in to this season. They got Ben Johnson, who offensive coordinator from Detroit last year. I think he'll really be helpful in the development of Caleb Williams. So they selected Colson Loveland, tight end Michigan. We know Ben Johnson likes a two tight end set. You know, you saw that from Detroit. First off, this his junior year, a lot of good production. Last year, not really, because Michigan did not have that quarterback to throw him the ball. So I think he's in a good place. I think Ben Johnson. He worked with tight ends before. Um, I think that's a big pickup for them. Uh, and now Caleb Williams, the pressure's on you. You gotta win. You gotta win in September. Or well, actually the whole season. Because you got DJ Moore, Romo Dunze, Luther Burden third, who I like. Uh, so there's a lot of pressure coming into the season, and I think Colson Loveland, you know, adds to that offensive weaponry. We thought, hey, could they select a running back? But there's a lot of running backs uh, in the draft, so they were fine. Uh, yeah, I'm high on the Bears. Okay, so I'm a huge Syracuse football fan. Uh, they selected Kyle McCord, picked by the Eagles in the sixth round. First off, congratulations to him. You know, he'll obviously be a backup, um, but I think he is very accurate. The Eagles, they put a lot of pieces. You know, so if we've seen Jalen Hurts have some injury issues. And look, I'm so happy for the kid. He came to Syracuse because Ohio State ran him off, and he proved everybody wrong. Uh, and he led Syracuse to 9 wins or 10 wins. If he wasn't there, uh, that team easily maybe 5 wins, 4 wins. So Kyle McCord was the real leader for the Syracuse Orange football team. He's a leader. He's an accurate passer. He's not the most mobile guy, but you know he can move a little bit, and he's a big body. So I'm just happy with him. But Ronnie Gadsden, another Syracuse football player, got selected by the Chargers. First off, congratulations to him. I love what the Chargers are doing. First off, Gadsden, Ronnie Gadsden, he knows how to play. He knows how to play football. He's not the best, um, run blocking tight end, but he can he can catch the football, and I think he's another pass catcher for uh, for Herbert. Uh, and they also selected the running back, uh, uh, Hampton out in North Carolina. Sorry, uh, for the pause. Um, you know, he was the second running back off the board. People say that he might be the best running back in the draft. So Harbaugh, coaching college, he knows who the best players are. So I do really like those two selections uh, for the Chargers. Um, and by the way, they have Najee Harris, um, which I think he'll be a good running back uh, for the for Los Angeles Chargers. Because Pittsburgh they didn't know offense, so I expect Najee to be a lot better. Um, okay, so let's talk about Short Sanders. Uh, he got selected by the Cleveland in the fifth round. Which, by the way, congrats to him. It's who cares where you're selected or what round you're selected. If you can ball out, nobody cares where you were picked. Let's just be honest. Um, but you know, Bell Kuiper had him number one on his big board for quarterbacks. Um, Look, I think the reality is Shador Sanders, big name, you know, the whole Deion Sanders drama, maybe. We knew Shador Sanders. People were saying that he wasn't great in the interview process. Uh, People thought he was cocky, and I think you saw that the first draft night where he had signs of legendary. Bro, you're not even in the league yet. Why do you have legendary? You're just a guy right now, And he had he posted we know where we're going, giant colored cleats. It's like, bro, what are you doing? Be humble, be a leader. Stop bragging. He had chains on. Bro, you're not that good. And I think the NFL told you you're not that good. You had questions. Stop, stop bragging. Be humble. Be thankful. No, but he has to do the work now. He has to do the work. Um, Now I don't agree that Jalen Milroe, Dylan Gabriel should have been picked ahead of them, but maybe they saw something. Uh, but the reality is that Shador he needs to work. He needs to work on himself. Uh, the quarterback is about being a leader, and look, I believe in him. But again, he got drafted by the Browns. They don't do well with quarterbacks. Who knows? Maybe he'll hit. Maybe he'll not be hit. But it's up to him to put in that work ethic, and I think he will. I think the Sanders family, they put in the work. They're just a proud family who, you know, but should. But Dion was good. He was great. He was proven. You're not, bro. So to be honest with you, Shador needs to grow up, be a leader, and I hope, I pray that he's a good quarterback. But we'll see. But you got to stop bragging, bro. Because Baker Mayfield bragged. Life turned out to be difficult, in the NFL. And once he was humbled, he actually turned out to be a solid quarterback. So being humbled, being a good teammate, not being about you, those are signs to being a good quarterback. And to me, I thought it was basically he was saying, "Guys, look at me, bro. You can't do that." So Uh, those are my quick thoughts on the NFL draft. I can't wait for the season to start in September. Um, so we'll talk to you guys soon.